Good afternoon, everyone in the gallery and people at home watching on television and those who will be watching our YouTube channel later today. I would like to call to order the April 7th, 2026 regular council meeting. And we'll begin with item 2, approval of the agenda. Councillors all have copies of the agenda in front of them. Is there any addition, deletions on the minutes? Anybody like to care and make a recommendation to approve the agenda? Councillor Hall, all in favor? None opposed? Approved. Item 3, the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 17th. Councillors have the attachment. Any additions, deletions, discussions regarding the minutes of March 17th meeting? All in favor? No? Approved. Call for a recommendation, a motion, please. Councillor Hall. Okay, we have the recommendation of the council approve the minutes of March 24th, 2026. All in favor?
Wait, there's an error.
Sorry.
There is an error in there.
Okay, but okay. My apologies. So the minutes of March 17th. We have a recommendation to approve the minutes, please. Councillor Hall. All right. And we have a call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Unopposed? Carried. So item 3.2, the committee of the whole meetings of March 24th, 2026.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. There is an error. It says when I declared a conflict of interest because I had a close family member that owned one of the properties. He owns a mortgage on one of the properties. He doesn't own the properties.
Thank you for that clarity, Councillor Roger.
Deputy Mayor Frechette, with that amendment noted, Council could move to adopt those minutes as amended.
Okay, thank you. Council to approve the minutes as approved. Do you have a question, Councillor Waxer?
No, I was just making the motion.
Okay,
I was
thank
just
you.
offering to make the motion.
Thank you. You're a long ways away there. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move to item 4, delegations. We have, did we miss 3.3? Okay, Councillor Hall is informed we missed Article 3.3. Public hearing of the meetings, the minute meetings of March 24th, 2026. Any additions, deletions, discussions on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of recommendation? Call for a motion, Laurie. Councillor Roger. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we're at item 4, delegations. I believe we have Mr. Troy Birtles, pardon me, from Accurate Assessment Group Limited. That's going to make a presentation on assessments, I understand.
Hello, can everybody hear me okay?
Loud and clear, yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Am I to share my screen with this folks, or is somebody else sharing? I can share, how about that? Um, can everybody see that there?
Yes, we can see it there now. Municipal of Jasper.
So first of all, I want to just introduce myself. My name is Troy Birtles. I am the appointed assessor for the municipality of Jasper. I work for and am a part owner of Accurate Assessment Group. We've been doing the assessments in Jasper for quite a long time. Some of you in the room today have seen me on an annual basis, and I understand some of you are new and may not know who I am. So one of the things that I like to do in my meetings is if anybody has any questions, absolutely feel free to jump in and fire away while I'm going through it. So from the purpose of today is just to give council a little bit more of an understanding about how assessment works and specifically how it works for property of owners that are affected by the wildfire.
Excuse me, Troy, I wonder if you could just speak up a little louder. We're having trouble hearing you in the gallery here. If you
Okay.
could, please. Thank you.
Is that any better? That work?
I'm getting nods in the gallery. Says yes, it is better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Do you want me to go back and restate what I just said?
Yeah, go ahead. You're just starting there, so if you don't mind, thank you.
Sure. My name is Troy Birtles. I'm the appointed assessor for Jasper. I've been doing the assessments for a number of years. Some of you in the room know me from previous meetings that I've had with council, and from what I understand, some of you are new and may never have met me before. So I like to the meetings that I present at, I like to have an open style discussion. So if anyone has any questions during my presentation, feel free to jump in and let me know. So I'm just going to give you a quick rundown on the agenda. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about Accurate Assessment Group. And specifically today, I want to talk to you folks about how assessment works, and more specifically as it relates to properties that are affected by the wildfire. This is a map of Alberta that shows our current client base. We're very proud of this map. Our municipal makeup ranges from small towns to large rural municipalities. We do several of the cities within the province of Alberta. So we have a wide range of knowledge that helps us run the assessments in Jasper. I include this slide on all my presentations, and the reason why is I want you folks to look at me as your trusted advisor for all things assessment. If you have any questions about how assessment works or why something is assessed the way it is, please feel free to reach out and get the answer from me so that you can properly inform those that are asking you as to whatever their questions or concerns are. Here I just show you a list of some of our staff. This is not a wholesome list of the folks at Accurate Assessment, but I include this to assure you that if one day, if I happen to win the lottery and decide that work is no longer for me, that we have several staff members at Accurate Assessment that can easily jump in and take over, so that you are not going to be left high and dry from an assessment perspective. So what is property assessment? Assessment is essentially the process of assigning a dollar value to property for taxation purposes. As we all know, the simple equation is assessment multiplied by the tax rate, which is the rate that you folks set, equals your tax bill. Of course, there's the school side on there as well, but it's a very similar thing. The assessed value is the same for both the municipal portion and the education portion of the tax bill. There's a bunch of legislation that dictates how we are to assess property in Alberta. I am not going to bore you with this today, but here just highlights a few of the more pertinent sections of the legislation that we adhere to. And one of the main differences between assessment and a fee simple appraisal is that assessments are mass appraisal, meaning we have to value a group of properties using common data, versus a fee simple appraisal would be, a site specific valuation on a property based on a particular valuation date that may or may not be the same as assessment. So just wanted to point out that the assessment and appraisal are not necessarily the same thing, although we do strive to get the same end result, which is market value. There are a number of different assessment classes in Alberta. These are the 4 classes as defined by the Municipal Government Act. Primarily, almost all properties in Jasper are based on the market value valuation standard. There is no farmland in the municipality and a small amount of designated industrial property. So those assessments are calculated by the provincial government, and my job is essentially the residential and non-residential portion of the municipality. So what is market value? It's the amount of money that a property might be expected to sell for on an open market from a willing seller to a willing buyer. All transactions are reported through land titles, so that's whether it's listed or not. If it's if you put a for sale sign on the front lawn and sell it privately, if you sell it to your sibling, all transactions have to go through land titles. And that is how we obtain the sale data. Now, once we get all of that information, we need to decide whether or not each transaction is a market-related transaction or an arm's length transaction. In other words, when you sell a property to your sister, it might be based on market value, but it might not be. A lot of times there are transactions for estate purposes that have no relationship to market value whatsoever. All of that analysis helps us decide which ones should be used for market purposes and which ones shouldn't be. Oops. So how do we estimate market value? So the starting point for a residential property is we need to determine what the land value is, and we do that based on vacant sales of residential property. Then we do the same thing for improved property transactions. And once we've determined what the improved value is, we minus off the amount that was attributed to the land, and the difference is the value that we place on the buildings. A common term for buildings is improvements. And sometimes that's misleading for property owners. Sometimes they look at that and say, well, I didn't renovate. I didn't improve my property at all this year. Improvements just simply means the value that's placed on the buildings. So before the wildfire, there were very few sales of vacant residential lots. Once or twice every several years, we might have a land transaction that comes along. Since the wildfire has happened, we've had a lot more market activity on vacant lots. So this is going to help us in the valuation process moving forward. All of these sales occurred after July 1, 2025, which is ultimately the valuation date for the current assessment. So they really weren't available to us when we created the assessment that's about to go out. However, they will be used in the process moving forward. So the current assessment is based on the limited sales data of vacant land that we had before. So the assessed value of improved residential property for the current assessment is based on 29 market-related transactions occurring between July 1, 2024 and June 30th, 2025. So you'll recall that time period was affected by wildfire. So 29 sales in that time period. For context, in the year prior to the fire, there were more than 50 market-related transactions. So you can see that the number of sales, not the sale price, but just the number of transactions in that 1 year period is less than what we're used to. So I want to just kind of walk through a bit of an example for you. So based on the vacant land sale data that we had, we determined that a lot is worth $475,000. And based on improved sales in the same area, we determined that improved properties are worth $975,000. And again, this is very general. This isn't based on one specific property, but generally speaking. Okay, so from that, we can determine that land is assessed at $475,000, and we can determine that the buildings is the difference between $975,000 and $475,000. So we've applied a value of $500,000 to the improvements to arrive at that $975,000 total assessment. Now that would be for a home that has been there for 40, 50 years, let's say. Okay, and now in that we apply the characteristics of the building to come up with that $500,000. So the age is a factor, the size is a factor, the type of construction, whether the basement is developed, whether it has a residential suite in the basement, all those things are considered to help us get to that valuation of $500,000. One of the major variables considered is age. So we need to understand what the difference in value of a 50-year-old home is as compared to the exact same thing, but brand new. And part of the process in doing that is we need to apply depreciation for age. So we have specific age life tables in our assessment system that help us to calculate what that is. I'm not going to get into great detail, but at a high level, this is what those charts look like. So basically, you follow a 60-year-old home up the chart, and it would hit if it was a 70-year life, you would have approximately 50% depreciation. Okay, so here's a better, more detailed example. So building with an age of 40 years, with a life of 60 years, would have a remaining economic value of approximately 55%. The depreciation tables bottom out at 35%. And what that means is after it gets to a certain level, no more depreciation is added or taken away from the value. And that's because there's still an existing use in place. In other words, to look at it a different way, a home that is 70 years old with an assigned age life of 60 years still has a 35% remaining amount. And that's because they're still using it. There's still value to it. So to think that that should depreciate to zero would be incorrect. And as you can see, a straight line depreciation is not the approach that's used for those reasons. So now if we look post-wildfire, and if I use the previous example of a home that's 40 years old with a 60-year life, everything else being the same, the assessed value would be as follows. You still have the same land value of $475,000. The sale or the value in total would go up because the home is newer, and that would mean the improvement value or the building value would be higher. And the real reason is because there's less depreciation applied. Now, if we think about that in a realistic perspective, would somebody pay more for the same thing that's brand new as compared to if it's 40 years old? Of course they would. So that's the general theory about the difference between the two pre and post wildfire values. Now, the true test is going to be when the reconstruction starts to resell. You know, that's going to tell us exactly the value difference between an original home versus a newly constructed home. And these, again, this is all for illustrative purposes. And there's many variables that are considered, but and one of those, for example, is the change in the market year over year. So how do we calculate that into our assessment? And that's something for another conversation. For today's purpose, I want everybody to assume that we're in a flat market to compare pre-wildfire to post-wildfire. Now, there's another bit of a scenario that could happen. You may or may not know, as I mentioned, the valuation date is July 1st, 2025 for the current assessment, but the physical characteristics date is December 31st of 2025. So what that means is if you started to build your home in 2025 and it was finished in 2025, well, you'd have a complete assessment. But like many of the homes under construction in 2025, a lot of them were not complete as of December 31st. And so therefore, as per the legislation, we need to reflect how they sat at that point. So we have in our assessment system, we call it a percent complete table. And we just essentially check it off. Does it have concrete foundation? Does it have a floor? Does it have base walls? Does it have a roof, exterior windows, doors, and so on? And once that checklist is gone through, that helps us determine the level of completeness that the home is to be assessed at. So to give you an example of what this chart looks like, this is essentially it. So basically, this would be what a home that is a shell or just that lockup stage, let's say, as of December 31st. We would not have anything assessed for all of these items, plumbing fixtures, heating, trim, flooring, all those kinds of things. And we would basically pull a section of that assessment away so that it's not included on the total assessment. So in this example, we have a home here. You can see that it's assessed at 44% complete. So if we go back to the example, whoops. Before, we had a $1.384 million assessment based on a new construction of a home that was complete in 2025. Yet now at this particular example, the home wasn't complete. So it's simple. We just simply apply the percent complete adjustment to it. And then we would calculate an assessed value for the improvements of $400,000, add that to the land. And that would be the assessment as of that they would see, coming here in the next month or two. So obviously that's not a complete assessment. And in Jasper, we have what we call a supplementary assessment bylaw. So what this does, it allows the municipality to apply an assessment and a tax amount to that unfinished portion of assessment once it's complete. There's a couple of different things that come into play. Land is not subject to supplementary assessment, and the previous improvement assessment is not subject to supplementary assessment. And it is prorated to the amount of the year that the home was complete or occupied. So to give you an example, based on what we discussed earlier, obviously land assessment would be 0 on the supplementary. The improvement assessment would be the total less the amount that we took off based on that progressive amount. So in that example, following the same one through, the supplementary assessment would be $509,000. If this particular home was was complete and occupied, let's say May 1st, then they would have a 7/12 portion on the supplementary. May, June, July up to December would be 7 months. June 1st, my bad. So the prorated amount in this case would be 509,000 divided by 12 times 7. They'd have a supplementary assessment bill of, or a supplementary assessment of 297,000. Frequently asked questions. There are, obviously a number of different things. Each individual assessment is unique in terms of what the property, what they're building, and the stage of completion. But one of the common questions is, I'm in the process of rebuilding, and all that was on my property at the end of the year was a foundation, walls, and roof. Why do I have an assessment of 300,000 for improvements when I could not live there? When the answer is, based essentially everything that I just discussed with you, and the Municipal Government Act states that we must have an assessment based on the property as of December 31st that reflects the physical characteristics. And it does not say, but if it's not livable, there must not be an assessment. That's not a thing in the legislation. And this is true for residential property, commercial property, all different kinds of property. So another question, will I receive the supplementary assessment? In this example, yes, they would. The instance where you will not see a supplementary assessment for new construction is when that new construction is completed and started in the same year and completed before the end of the year. So in other words, the new assessment that comes out in the spring would be based on the full complete assessment. Property owners often ask, will I receive another supplementary assessment next year? No, you will only receive one supplementary assessment on a property. God forbid if their property was to be destroyed again and they redid the building process, then that would be subject to a supplementary assessment. And then often my question is, what will my assessment be next year? That's a hard question to answer, simply because we have to review a whole different set of market transactions to come up with the assessment. Generally speaking, in Alberta and specifically in Jasper, we see a fairly strong market. It's not overly influenced by oil and gas. Somewhat it might be, but not like some of the other municipalities that we provide assessment services for. So it is a fairly consistent market-driven value in Jasper. So we can kind of generalize on that last question, but don't have really specific answers. I know that is a lot of information in a short amount of time, so I am happy to answer any questions that council might have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Birtles, for that. You're right, very comprehensive presentation. I'll look for councillors. Any questions? Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, and through you to Mr. Birtles. I'm not sure that, for example, in Cabin Creek, houses are only 40, 45 years old, but a lot of people consider them very modern and very new, and they've depreciated down a bit. But if you replace the exact same house with new construction, if you're saying that the value is going to go up by $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000, I don't think that's reflective of the market. And I think people are going to be very upset that their taxes are going to go up that much, because they're basically getting the same house, even though the wood and everything in the walls might be new. It's the same size and everything else. So I'm not sure I follow your logic on that.
Okay, yeah. My example is general for sure. In the example that you provided, I would argue that something new is going to be worth more than something 40 years old. Now, the real question is how much more? And I mentioned in one of the slides is the true test will be when those homes start to resell after they've been constructed. How long will that take for that to happen? It's really difficult to say. I would suspect that some folks might rebuild and immediately put them on the market. Listings will give us a general idea of what something might sell for. But really, until we have those transactions come through, nobody is going to know for sure. In
You're
Cabin
going
Creek,
to raise the assessment though, based on the fact that it's new. And if they don't sell for that price, then you're going to reduce the assessment in the next few years. Is that what's going to happen?
ideally, in the next few years, we're going to have plenty of sales data to support whatever direction the assessment needs to go. This first year, like the assessments that are about to come out here now in the next month or so, in Cabin Creek, there were, a handful of homes under construction. So all of them have a progressive assessment on them as we speak. And then next year, if we jump forward a year, those assessments on anything that's been constructed will be converted to complete. And, in a perfect world, we're going to have some kind of transaction to help us guide us through that process to determine what that final value should be on the constructed. If we don't have any sales, that's when it gets really difficult.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. And this may be a question for Director Malinchuk or even CAO Given, but because we're back in our new home and our assessed value went up by quite a bit, but does that necessarily mean that taxes will go up by that same percent that isn't it a pie? And I wonder if someone could explain that. And this is along the lines of Councillor Rogers' questioning.
Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Hall. Yes, you will see the taxes increase because your assessment is increasing as well as the tax is increasing. So if your assessment went down and the taxes increased, then it would be, there's a sliding scale there. But yes, you would see an increase.
CO Given.
I'm smiling, Deputy Mayor Frechette, because this is between Troy's presentation and the Councillor Hall's question just now. We get into the complexity of the overall municipal assessment, and so Councillor Hall, and if you don't mind, we'll use your property. You brought it up, so in the previous year, your property taxes reflected just the value of the land, as Troy referenced. Now, your assessed value will reflect the land and the improvement, the home on the land. And so your assessment will increase by quite a bit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes will increase by the same percentage amount, because your assessment is a small share of the overall overall residential assessment in the urban residential class. And so the effect between, the added value of your home, your improvement, how much of a splash did that make in the total of $1.8 billion of assessment of the whole municipality? It's a pretty small splash. And so, no, you won't see that direct relationship. Yes, your taxes will go up because you're being taxed on more value, but the correlation isn't direct. So if you had $400,000 in land value, and then you added another $400,000, just for round numbers for me, have you doubled the value because of the improvement on it? Does that mean your taxes will necessarily double? No, not necessarily, because the other properties that weren't impacted by the fire may have also increased in value in the course of the last year, and so your $400,000 of added improvements value might be diluted across the overall tax base. I know that doesn't, the point is, no, it's not a direct relationship. Yes, people's taxes will go up if they're only paying on land value last year, and now they have an improvement on there. Yes. But is it directly one-to-one in terms of value? No, I don't believe it is.
Councillor Waxer.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, through you to Mr. Birtles. Does the province utilize the assessments prepared for the municipality? And the secondary question is, do they cost share the cost of assessing the properties?
Okay, so first part of the question, does the province use the assessment? I assume you're referring to um, the school requisition. Is that? Okay, so it gets a bit complex, but they have what they call the equalized assessment. And there's a process that they go through to calculate what that equalized assessment number is. And they use that amount to calculate what they charge for school taxes. It indirect. The equalized assessed amount is the amount that they use for all of their grant funding equations, their school funding equations. It's all part of that equalized assessment. So the total assessment base, right? They don't look at property one and say it's assessed at $1 million property, right? It's the total assessment base. And then the second part of the question was, do they share in that cost? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So I meant, do they share the cost of having the assessments prepared?
The province does not pay
Okay,
for any
that's all I need to know.
of the
Okay.
cost of the assessment. They don't pay for the assessment to be calculated.
And sorry, and I had one more question, is how do you determine the lifespan of a property? Would all residential homes have the same? You talked about 60 years, or does it depend on the other factors?
It's dependent on a number of different factors, primarily the type of home it is, the quality of home it is, it has a lot to do with it. For example, a wartime home, which there's plenty of them in Jasper, would have, say, a 50-year life versus a brand new energy efficient 2x6 wall, energy efficient windows and doors home would have more like a 60 or 70-year age life. So based on what it is how we choose what age life to apply to it. And I alluded to it a little bit, but that's gets us to the step right before the final number is calculated. And there's one last process that has to be done. And ultimately what that does is it takes that total cost assessment, the land plus the buildings, compares it to the sale price. And if there's a variance, I have to apply a market adjustment factor to get that cost-based number to match market value. So like the cost-based number stays the same year over year with the addition of a little bit of depreciation. But if the market value tends to increase a little bit, then that last step, the one that I determine what the market adjustment factor is, that will level the assessment to be equal to what the market value is. In a declining market, that number is how we get the assessments down to what market value is. So I kind of rambled on your initial question, but ultimately it's based on the building type to get the age life.
Thank you. And I have one final question. And does an older home that's been kept up and modernized, new roof, new wiring, new plumbing, continue to have the same depreciation as a home that hasn't been renovated?
No, essentially what we would do is we would look at the extent of the renovations. Let's say it's new roof, new shingles, new windows, new doors, new siding, and they redid the inside. Well, they significantly impacted the value of this property and extended the age of the lifespan of that building. So we would say it was originally built in 1950, but they've done these massive renovations, and now it's more like a 1980 built home or whatever the case is, for example. And then we would depreciate it based on a 1980 age rather than a 1950 age. And to justify that, you think about it, would somebody pay more for it after those renovations? Absolutely, they would.
Thank you. That's all of my questions for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions from fellow councillors? If not, I do have one question, Mr. Birtles. I'm wondering, obviously we're going to be in a state of flux here for a number of years as to where the market is going to land. What is the sample size or the snapshot as to where the values will land in any particular sector of the housing, be it duplexes or single family homes, or like how many, in other words, how many properties would have to change hands before an adjustment would be made on the assessment and moreover the tax base?
Well, any sales are considered, certainly. I mentioned that in the last year we had 29 market transactions, and the year before we had 50. 50 is pretty typical. And that's enough market data to help me understand if the assessment should be increasing or decreasing or stay the same. Obviously, we were able to do it with 29 transactions. We still have to go through the testing process, which is, ratepayers understanding any questions they might have. And just an interesting point is the assessments have been mailed for quite some time, and we've fielded a handful of phone calls and not many at all. And further to that, I'll be in Jasper on Thursday for an open house, just for anybody to come in and speak to me if they wanted to discuss their assessment. But ultimately we could do the job with even fewer transactions. It just makes it a little bit more difficult. There are always outliers. In other words, some that are really low and some that are really high, but ideally most of them come into that middle place, and that's how we're able to, have the range in valuation. Not really sure if that's answered your question fully.
No, it's like I say, it's going to be we're going to be in a state of flux here for a good number of years, I think. I'm surprised that you would have a sample size of 50 transactions. I didn't realize we had anywhere near that number in our community, but clearly we're going to have a huge difference between, we're going to have ostensibly a huge supply of brand new homes that are going to change the metrics of all the values in our community, no question.
Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate your presentation, and if there's no other questions for Mr. Birtles, I would like to thank you again. That was very informative, and I think that our community be well served to come in and ask questions in person regarding their own situation, or maybe beneficial for helping them make their decisions with their plans going forward.
Sure.
Thank you again. So can I have anybody have an appetite to make a motion to accept the presentation for information? Councillor Roger. Thank you. In favor? Opposed? No, thank you. Moving on, I think we have another delegation that wishes to present. Am I correct in that assumption? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Andrew. Councillor Roger,
I have to recuse myself on this one. Thank you.
Okay. CEO Given.
Sure. So, Deputy Mayor Frechette, if Councillor Roger recuses himself due to a conflict of interest, which he's been consistent on that end, then we don't actually have quorum for the council meeting, which puts us in a little bit of a difficult situation. I think council could likely hear the submissions, but when item 6.3 comes up, I think it's likely that we will have to table that to the next regular council meeting. So appreciating that there are folks here that wish to present to council, I think you could probably hear them. And then after the close of any presentations, Councillor Roger could come back. Council could close the delegation portion of the agenda and then move on to the rest of the agenda. So that would be my advice. Councillor Roger, I think you could hear the presentations. I think that declaration of the conflict of interest is probably appropriate, Councillor Roger. I think the remaining council members could receive the presentations or could hear the presentations. We just voting on them would be a bit problematic. So my suggestion would be Councillor Roger should declare the conflict of interest. Then you could leave the council chamber. The remaining council members can hear the presentations. And then when we get to item 6.3, you would declare conflict again, Councillor Roger. And that would trigger item 6.3 having to be carried over to the next regular council meeting.
Thank you, CEO Given. Councillor Hall and Waxer are fine with that. And if Mr. Andu would like to present today, if you're okay with the explanation that CEO Given is presented, we're happy to hear your presentation, and we'll just table the under item 6.3. We'll just table it for the next meeting, if that's fine with you.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Frechette, and to the other councillors and the administration. I'm here to speak on behalf of my business, which is the Astoria Hotel. My name is George Andrew, and I'm the owner. And I'm respectfully requesting an extension to the potential auction, forced auction of the property. And the reason being is that we are currently in the process of refinancing, and which we believe will be done in within the period that I would request at least 2 months. And the reason being is that we, of course, suffered substantial decline in our revenues as a result of the 3 disasters that we have had since 2020. And most of those disasters impacted our solid revenue summer period. We have been able to still pay our staff and also pay our municipal utilities to the extent of about $65,000 a year, and also our gas and electricity and our mortgage and our insurance, which are all essential to actually having a business license. But we have been unable to meet our obligation with respect to our municipal taxes. We fully expect and will pay our municipal taxes when we are able, and if we have another couple of years, 3 or 4 years of good revenues as we experienced in 2025, that is very achievable. I have a 100-year-old property, and we are unique in terms of commercial accommodation in Jasper, as I am the sole owner of that property. I don't have any other partners. I have no other assets. I have no other forms of revenue. And it is the Astoria Hotel that is my sole business. And as a result of that, we have struggled. So I respectfully request an extension on the forced auction of my property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew. I can certainly appreciate all of the hardships that many of our businesses have had in Jasper in the last 5 years. It seems to be one thing after another. I see that the date of the potential to pay the tax bill is somewhere down the road until June, I believe. I would hope that that's doable, for your family, for your business, obviously. But having said that, I think we will have to forward this to our next meeting so that we can have further discussion on how we will proceed, and when we have a proper council here, it's in its entirety. But I thank you for your presentation today, and we wish you well. I mean, there's no question. We want all of our businesses to survive and thrive, and especially your business is like you say, it's a 100-year-old business, and yeah, it's something that we would hope the best for.
Thank you.
You, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. My question is for administration. Is there a certain amount of time that we need to give notice for a public auction? Like if we are now going to push this to the next council meeting, does that give it a couple week extension? Because, is there an amount of time that we have to follow?
Deputy Mayor Frechette, Director Malinchuk may be looking up the details, but yes, there is. There are legislative requirements for how long advertising needs to happen, and how long, and the methods of advertising and the period of advertising. So if this item, as we suspect that it will be, is tabled to the next regular council meeting, if we needed to adjust the recommended date of the public auction, administration could advise at that time of what the new date would be.
Councillor Washer, did I see your hand up there?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Through you to CAO Given. Is it within our abilities to provide an opportunity for an extension based on the legislation with the province?
Deputy Mayor Frechette for Councillor Waxer. So under the MGA, Council has quite broad latitude with respect to taxes and penalties. I think as I've related to Council before, this comes up to a matter of consistency and equity. And it's up to Council to, and I think actually that's the term that's used under the MGA. Council may waive, cancel, a whole bunch of things with respect to taxes. And I think this is a direct quote from the MJ, when it considers it equitable to do so. And so the question really comes down to what does council consider it's equitable to do? And what does council consider may create a precedent that you or future councils would be called on to follow in other cases? So Councillor Waxer, I believe council has quite broad latitude. It's a question about how you exercise that latitude in a way that is equitable to other taxpayers who have been in this community and have been paying their taxes, and how you would treat similar requests from other taxpayers in the future.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, CEO Given. If there are no other questions of Mr. Andrew, thank you again for your presentation, and we will table this to the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other delegations that wish to speak to council?
Deputy Mayor Frechette, we should just, as a delegation comes up, we should just confirm if they're speaking to the same matter, because if it's a different matter, then Councillor Roger can come back. If it's the same matter, Councillor Roger needs to stay out. So just make sure we confirm that with the delegations.
Thank you for that, CEO Given.
Thank you very much. I'm here to address agenda item 6.3 as well.
Okay.
My name is Paul Butler. I'm Executive Director of Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce. Procedurally, I feel like this is really difficult. It's quite likely that I may come here and say exactly the same thing when this actually comes to council, because it's unclear to me whether these presentations are even really able to be received. But you have no choice other than to proceed the way you have. I'm saying I may come back and read the same thing in 2 weeks. This is difficult in all sorts of ways. There is no way to avoid the really personal nature of this, living as we do in a small town where we all know one another. And whereas we often say we're all in this together, it's a tough one. Frankly, I'm happy to be sitting on this side of the table. I'll acknowledge that Mr. Andrew and I are longtime friends. I'm doing my best to take a dispassionate view. I'm here on behalf of Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to speak from the perspective of the business community and talk about long-term sustainability of our business community. Wording in the bylaw is constructed in a way that the term unpaid taxes includes both taxes and penalties levied on unpaid taxes. And it is valid to recognize that the actual amount of taxes in this instance is just over half of what's actually owed. The rest is penalties. The penalty rates in your bylaw are among the highest, if not the highest, that I've been able to find anywhere. I haven't been able to find any that are higher in the province. The penalty amount they've paid amounts to a financial windfall for the municipal organization, and it just doesn't seem right. It seems a little bit opportunistic. It's important to remember that the amount of penalties in question was never budgeted for. It's never been anticipated. Of course, there is community cost to unpaid penalties, but that cost is really overstated by the extent of penalties in the bylaw. The real cost to the community of unpaid taxes is something more along the lines of interest on the unpaid taxes. So the situation is unprecedented, and there's a valid argument that in these unprecedented circumstances, council could choose to vary the penalties. Obviously, the principal amount has to be paid. Everyone has to pay their taxes. I think we all understand that. But council does have discretion with respect to penalties. We acknowledge there are hard issues around fairness and precedents, but these really are unprecedented circumstances. All of us hope that we will never face this set of circumstances again. So I think that's an important matter to think about when you're thinking, as you should be, about setting precedent. The town has already lost businesses who just couldn't make it following the fires. It's already bad enough. Is it worth losing another, and let me say, a keystone business of long local history, over penalties that are not really part of anyone's budget? I suggest the cost to the community of that outcome of putting a property on the auction block may well outweigh the benefit of collecting on the penalties. If the municipality can collect on the tax portion of the debt, it's reasonable to ask whether that's not a better community outcome than putting a property on the auction block. Taxes have to be paid, but the combination of circumstances over these past years should not amount to a financial windfall for the municipal organization. That's what I have today. Thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Members of council have any questions for Mr. Butler's presentation? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. And thank you, Mr. Butler. This isn't actually a question for Mr. Butler. It's towards administration. So last year in 2025, we gave an option to forgive 2024 penalties for any property owners in arrears. And did we, so I'm just, the ask here is to bury the penalties. Did other businesses or property owners pay penalties? Would we have to then refund? Has there been penalties paid? Would we have to now refund penalties? I just want to make sure it's all fair. And I mean, this is not an easy situation. And I appreciate you coming to speak on behalf of the chamber for the Astoria.
CEO Gibbon.
Sure. Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. So while I don't have the totals from last year at hand, the municipality, council did provide a number of waivers of penalties, and in fact extended the waiver of penalties for a sort of a second extended period. Anybody that was eligible had the opportunity to take advantage of that waiver, meeting certain conditions, which included signing up for a tax installment plan and sort of coming current with their accounts, or signing up for that tax installment plan. So those were things that were accessible to other taxpayers who are in a similar situation. And there are others who have amounts outstanding from prior years, and even some for a couple of years. So there's not only one property that would be in this condition. There are others that are maybe trailing a little bit further behind. There are others that have maybe made payments that have kept them from receiving the same amount of penalties. So the penalties start to be applied after certain periods of non-payment. And so we do have some taxpayers who will run that very close to the line without getting into the penalty situation or compounding penalties. I think this case is unique in the fact that there are a number of years of compounded penalties, but we do regularly have a small number of taxpayers who will get very close to that point, but never quite this far.
Director Malinchuk.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor through to Councillor Hall. Yes, so there were some that took up the opportunity of what was presented, and we have about 20-ish ballpark that took that opportunity to avoid the penalties in that process.
Thank you for that explanation, Director Malinchuk. Any further questions of Mr. Butler from Council? Seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Butler, for your presentation. Is there anyone else in the gallery that wishes to speak during this period? Having seen none, you could ask Councillor Roger to return to the chamber. Thank you. I wonder, before we hear Mr. Olthoff, if this would be, I don't know if this would make a mess of your schedule, if we could just have a 10-minute break just to grab a coffee. Thank you. 10 minutes, then we'll return at 1:45. Welcome back. We will resume the council session, and we're going to move on to item 5, correspondence. And I see we have, oh, there's no correspondence, pardon me. Perfect. Well, we'll get right through that then. Item 6, we have the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress update. See, we have Mr. Olthoff today. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. So today, I will be presenting our regular JRCC update. And in addition to covering at a high level all of the recovery priorities, we will be focusing a bit on interim housing in particular. A while back, a couple of months back, we started doing more in-depth focuses on specific recovery priorities during each of these presentations, and we've now completed a full cycle of those. So during the last council meeting, there was an update on park recovery. That brought us to the end of the 6 key priorities, and we're back at the top of the order again with interim housing. But before we get to interim housing, I'll go through all of the other recovery priorities, beginning with debris management. At present, of the 341 non-commercial fire-affected properties in Jasper, only 6 remain without certificates of completion. So that represents a 98% completion rate in terms of debris management for residential properties inside of the town site. Of the total 393 debris removal or demolition permits that have been issued, 374 have received certificates. So looking at the entirety of the town, commercial and residential, as well as properties outside of the town boundary, we're at a 95% completion rate for debris management. There's only one property left in the town site that has debris remaining on it. Work is beginning there in the coming weeks, and we can say that at present, none of the properties that are yet without a certificate of completion are undergoing additional soil remediation. That is all to say that the debris management portion of the recovery operation is drawing to a close. We are getting very close to having achieved all of our objectives in this area. Moving on to the rebuild. As we move towards the full construction season, the Parks Canada Realty Office is seeing an uptick in development permit and building permit applications. We expect that uptick to continue. The timeline for processing those permit applications remains very strong and is outperforming comparable municipalities in the province, with a 6-month average of 19 business days for the processing of a complete development permit application. Approximately 57% of wildfire-affected leaseholds have initiated the permitting process with Parks Canada. So we've moved across that 50% rate a few weeks ago and are continuing to progress. 18 properties have achieved occupancy at this stage, and there's an expectation that a substantial number of properties will achieve occupancy in the coming weeks and months. This slide in particular demonstrates the progress that's being made in terms of people moving from the planning and preparation process into permitting, building, and finally occupancy. So you can see on a month-by-month basis that purple bar, which represents all of the folks who are still preparing and designing, getting ready to submit development and building permit applications. That large purple bar is shrinking as more and more people move into that process. And critically, the green bar at the far right of the screen is growing as people obtain occupancy and move into their new homes. The past 6 months have seen the number of wildfire-affected properties moving into that permitting process go from 39% to 57%. So again, significant progress over the past several months. Of the 282 dwelling units that currently have building permits, under all of the building permits issued, there are 282 dwelling units represented. 74 of those are net new. So we are seeing movement towards the objective of increasing the total stock of housing in the community with net new units in the building process. The JRCC has received correspondence as well on a related issue with respect to the 2-year statutory limit on insurance claims. We received correspondence from the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Among other things, that correspondence outlines the position that a blanket extension of the 2-year statutory limit on insurance claims could have negative effects on the timeline for recovery. The position outlined by the IBC is that such a blanket extension would result in slower rebuild times and delay the rebuild for the community as a whole. That is the extent of the correspondence we've received on that issue so far, just from IBC. Moving on, to social recovery. The Pathfinders program continues with training throughout the spring season. We recently surpassed 100 Jasperites who've completed that training, and we continue to receive very positive feedback from those who participate in the training and from the community as a whole. A second needs assessment survey was conducted toward the end of last year, and we have been drafting and have drafted a report summarizing the findings of that survey, which will be brought to Council for review in a coming session. In economic recovery, JRCC staff have conducted an outreach campaign for businesses that were physically wildfire affected. And the team has been gathering information on recovery progress and support needs. Again, a summary of that will be forthcoming to Council in a future session. The interim industrial park is fully occupied and operational. Last week, Adriano Laundry celebrated their grand opening in the park, in the interim industrial park, which was a major accomplishment for that business that has put a lot of work into getting their temporary accommodations and location up to operational capacity. The commercial pop-up village is also operational, with Jasper motorcycle tours beginning operations there this week. That site still has availability for eligible businesses who are encouraged to reach out. Now, with that, we'll move into the interim housing deep dive. To begin with, a quick summary of developments in interim housing. There are currently 403 households in the program, representing 738 individuals. Residents have begun moving into units at both the Patricia Circle and United Church sites. That is in addition to the museum site in town. So all of the newer interim housing sites in town are now being occupied. All interim housing units in town remain fully occupied or allocated. The JRCC has now processed over 1,185 applications for interim housing, and we continue to receive substantial numbers of new applicants each week. With this recent influx of new housing applications, the list of applicants who have not yet received offers of housing continues to increase. There are currently 161 applicant households that fall into that category. That is, they've applied and have not received an offer of housing. And as I mentioned, housing in the program remains fully occupied or allocated at this point. 34 Jasper businesses applied to the interim housing business reservation program. That was a number of rooms that were set aside in the dorms at Marmot Meadows for reservation by local businesses in advance of the busy tourism season. 5 offers have been made and accepted for those reservations. So, as I'd mentioned, interim housing, while not 100% occupied and allocated, is very near to that number. And we continue receiving applications every week. In addition to allocating to those new applicants as vacancies allow, the JRCC is also working to reassign resident households to better meet their needs insofar as possible. That is to say, many households have been moved into interim housing, into units that are workable for their households, but not ideal. And so if we have, for example, a family of 4 with 2 school-aged children occupying a trailer unit at Marmot Meadows and something becomes available in town, we try very hard to accommodate a move into town to be assured that school-aged children in particular can access school and things of that nature. There are currently 211 applicant households without a current offer. I'd said a moment ago 161 have yet to receive an offer. There are also about 51 or 50 households on that list who've received offers in the past and declined for one reason or another and have asked for an offer of a different type or a different location. Allocation of interim housing continues on the basis of an established prioritization matrix, which was established at the outset of the program and is guided by the principle of matching available units to the characteristics of applicant households. So you can see in this pie graph here, of those awaiting an offer, 76% have yet to receive any offer of any kind. 24%, as I'd mentioned, received an offer of the past, declined the initial offer for one reason or another, and are awaiting a new offer of a different type or a different location. The next slide shows the available units versus allocated units. With occupancy now granted on the United Church site, we can say that the interim housing program is now fully established, with all of the units expected to be included in the program now currently ready for occupancy. As we move into the busy tourism season, we anticipate full occupancy, including at the Marmot Meadows dormitory style site, which has been the most difficult, in particular over the winter months, to fill. You'll see that there in this chart, there is a gap between the available and in-house units. That mostly reflects that vacancies have been in the dorm-style units at Marmot Meadows over the winter. And we expect that, as I said, to change as we get busier into the spring and summer. The total number of units across the entire interim housing program, now that it is fully installed, is 505. That number represents the number of units if all of the duplex units, if you're familiar with them, were used as 2 units rather than a single unit for a larger household. 309 of those 505 potential units are at Marmot Meadows. Looking to the future for the interim housing program, we have a number of priorities moving forward. First, livability enhancements. With things like tree planting coming up in July, garden boxes to be installed in interim housing sites, and some hard landscaping on some of the newer interim housing sites in town. We're continuing to work to improve living conditions in these sites for those residents. We also are exploring additional funding to extend the program beyond its current end date in March 2027. We are monitoring the reestablishment of permanent housing in the community to inform plans for the interim housing program going forward. We provide supportive communication to interim housing residents, and we are planning for phased demobilization and site restoration. To sum up, the interim housing program has now arrived at a new stage. We are no longer establishing the program. It is fully established. We have achieved near full occupancy, and we do expect that there will be continual turnover in the program throughout its lifespan, but the major operation of assigning units on a large scale is by and large complete. We expect to be providing ongoing support to interim housing residents throughout the remainder of the program, to continue monitoring permanent housing development and prepare for supported demobilization as time goes by. And when I say supported demobilization, that is across the full spectrum of social supports and working with folks in interim housing to ensure that they are planning ahead and identifying permanent housing solutions. That is all, and as always, I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Director Althoff. Councillors, any questions for the Director? Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, and through you to Mr. Althoff. I as well read that letter about the insurance where they kind of just told us to go away. I guess I'm asking what suggestions there are, because we've gone through this already. We don't, as a town, want to be responsible for contacting every insurance company in case we miss one, and then we could be responsible. But the people, of course, that are going to miss things or foul it up are the ones that are the least able to do it themselves. And you know, just by statistics, the number of people involved here, there's bound to be somebody that misses it if we don't do it for them. So I'm just wondering what steps could have a discussion what we should do. I mean, I was thinking maybe somebody should contact all the insurance agents in the area and get them to write letters to their companies or something like that, you know, or advertising, you know, better than what we're doing. I don't know.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, to Councillor Roger, thanks very much for the question. I think first you've identified very clearly the main problem, and that is that the insurance relationship is a contractual relationship between an insurance provider and the insured. And as a municipality, I think we are right to be very cautious about inserting ourselves in that relationship. As I understand it, there is a level of conversation between the municipality and the provincial government on this issue. In my assessment, our probably most effective role at this point is to gather all the information that we can through organizations like IBC, through this Alberta Superintendent of Insurance and provincial ministries, and to provide information to residents through every channel we have available to us. Taking the suggestion of reaching out to different insurance providers on this issue, I think is a possibility. What the Insurance Bureau of Canada relayed to us is that it's quite a difficult thing to do. It's quite a large number of different insurance providers. We don't necessarily have a direct line of contact to each one of them. And again, there is that question of the municipality inserting itself into a contractual relationship between an insurance provider and the insured. So at this stage, I think continuing the conversation with counterparts at the provincial level and providing as much and as clear as possible information to residents is our best way forward. And we're always open to and interested in any further direction on that.
I'm just wondering if, like, there's no more newspaper, although there is the one that's online, but some sort of better advertising to everybody to let them know what the issue is and point them in the right direction. And I'm not sure how far we can go on that, but it seems to me that if we just don't do anything, a couple more months are going to go by, and I'm not confident at all that the provincial government's going to get involved here. I think that that would be great if they would, but I'm not confident about that. So I just put that out there.
CO Given.
Deputy Mayor Fischette, for Councillor Roger, appreciating what you're saying, that maybe the municipality could do more to make residents aware of the impending deadline. Again, just on the to cover the bases in case we don't see any action from the provincial government. And Councillor Roger, I think your assessment is probably pretty accurate about the likelihood of change in the province. So if council wanted to, a way to make sure that that's on the record would be a motion from council directing administration to undertake efforts to increase public awareness about the impending deadline with respect to insurance claims. That at least would formalize it rather than just being a conversation, and would allow JRCC and administration generally to figure out how best to inform residents of this impending deadline. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose that thread. This is a topic that's been important to council, important enough to write the Premier and others in the provincial government. And I'm hearing that there's a desire for the municipality to at least undertake some active efforts to make sure the public's aware. I think having the conversation at council is doing part of that. And it has hit the local media a few times, but if council wanted more than probably a motion directing administration to undertake efforts to increase public awareness of the impending deadline for insurance claims, that'd probably be enough. And then we could take that away and act on it.
Councillor Roger, would you care to make that motion?
Yes, I could make that motion. Do I need to repeat it all, or can we just say the motion that what Mr. Given has just indicated to us?
Yes, I trust Director Given will be able to put the right verbiage down for us. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Fischette, as long as all of council is clear and has the same understanding about what you'd vote on. I mean, ultimately, you want to make sure that everybody understands the motion that you're voting on. And if Councillor Roger is comfortable with that wording and the rest of council is clear, administration can make sure that we get it documented for the minutes correctly. Please
Fair enough.
vote on it.
Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Waxer, you're far away. I don't know if you have any discussion. Councillor Hall, go ahead.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fischette. And I would vote in favor of a motion. I'm just going to repeat it so that it's on the record that Councillor Roger is making to undertake efforts to increase public engagement around the impending deadline with respect to insurance claims, directing administration. Is that the motion, Councillor Roger?
Yes, and to, I guess, advertise in whatever means possible the impending deadline and the consequences and how to go about meeting the deadline.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed? Carried. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fischette. Through you to Director Olthoff, I have a couple questions. One around debris removal. So once it is closed and done, does that, I guess, section of the JRCC also close and be finished off? And is the person who has that responsibility move on to a different job within the JRCC?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Fischette, to Councillor Hall. Certainly that scope of work will be concluded. That work is primarily led by Parks Canada with some project management support, particularly during the large-scale debris removal process that was happening last year. So from the municipality's perspective, our principal engagement with debris management has concluded already. The remainder of the program is being managed through Parks Canada. And in terms of the JRCC's ongoing operations, the working group meetings, the updates that we provide, that will conclude when the final debris removal process has concluded.
And if I may, a second question. I'm hearing this a lot from residents in the community around the gas stations, and coming into another busy summer. There was conversation maybe in the last couple of months about maybe temporary gas stations being brought in, and also the 2 sites that were destroyed in the fire. Just wondering if you have any insight on what's happening with those, or is a temporary gas station an option?
Again, through you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, to Councillor Hall. We've had a number of conversations with different parties on that issue. One of the many challenges involved in temporary fueling stations is that there is a limited amount of land in the town that is zoned for fueling stations. And fueling stations typically, maybe always, generate a significant amount of contamination. And so in order to put a temporary station in place, the only straightforward path would be to do it on the existing pieces of land that are zoned for that use. And both of those pieces of land are undergoing processes of rebuild. And so to do both, operating a temporary station and go through the rebuild process at the same time, ultimately the decision of the leaseholder, but acknowledging that it is a complicated matter. And we've been in contact with both of the leaseholders of those 2 sites. Neither has expressed optimism about creating a temporary fueling station. Their concerns range from that sort of logistical problem of doing 2 things at once on the same piece of land to significant concerns about public safety. We had one with the leaseholders let us know that they would only consider a temporary fueling station in a place where it was exclusively used by professional drivers. They wouldn't want to have the general public using an above ground fueling station. So with all of those concerns in mind and gauging the tone and direction of conversation we've had with those leaseholders, the expectation at this point that all of the processes involved in putting a temporary fueling station in place and all the complications involved mean we are not likely to see that in the summer of 2026. We do expect to see reconstruction work begin on at least one, if not both, of those former fueling station sites in the coming months. Optimistically, that might mean that more fueling stations will be available in Jasper for summer 2027.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, and through to Mr. Alta. A couple questions. The first one is, well, do you know why the gas stations have been so slow? I mean, they're big corporations with lots of money. It seems like they should have been the first things that would have happened here.
Through you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, to Councillor Roger. Being that this is primarily a Parks Canada remit, the zoning and the permitting for those rebuilds, I haven't had direct contact with that work. I do know that the environmental impact assessment and planning phase of a rebuild for a fuel station is more onerous than it would be, for example, for a residential build. So that may be part of the process, but I can't really speak to the specifics of the process for those 2 leaseholders.
Another question I had was, do we know now when or how long the interim housing is going to stay? Is there already a schedule that they're going to be taken away, or is that still an ongoing discussion?
And through Deputy Mayor Frechette to Councillor Roger, at present, the interim housing program is funded through the end of March 2027. That is the funding that was allocated to Parks Canada for the program, and that's where we sit right now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Frechette. I just wanted to touch a little bit on Councillor Rogers' question about, why these businesses aren't moving forward. I think it's outside of any local permitting or sort of regulatory approvals. We have to acknowledge that these are large multinational corporations, and they run through a national or sometimes international process for where they choose to allocate capital. And so while they're very important in the context of Jasper's community operations and our summer tourist offering and important for our community, they may not be at the top of the list on, I think one of the properties is 7-Eleven. And 7-Eleven is pretty big. And this is one outlet out of probably thousands. And they're probably trying to decide where they put their money. And so there may be outside of the permitting process or regulatory process locally, which may or may not be more advanced than anywhere else. I'm not even sure that would be. I think gas station regulations are pretty high everywhere. There may be a need for council to advocate for allocation of capital within the corporation. You know, at a really fundamental level, you need to go to the business and say, look, you're going to spend blank millions of dollars in building things across Canada this year. Some of that should go to Jasper to ensure that these Jasper locations get rebuilt. So there might be an element of advocacy that council may wish to take up with the individual businesses. Again, just making that distinction in the same way that homeowners are proceeding at really different paces. I think some businesses are proceeding at really different paces because of how they may have had insurance coverage, how they may choose to allocate capital, what their financial position is. And so it's still a complicated picture, but there are at least some entities that council could choose to advocate towards if you wish to.
Thank you for that, CO Given. Councillor Waxer, did you have any questions for Director Althoff? No, I see none. I do have a couple of questions, if I may. When it comes to the debris removal, Director Althoff, we sort of, I think it's sort of understood that we're talking about the debris on the individual properties, whatever was left of the home or what have you. Is there any focus on debris and green spaces, to be it trees that were cut down or left lying about? There's a number of locations where we see trees that were either knocked down by firefighting efforts and whatnot, and it's still around in different green spaces. Is that part of the cleanup process, or is that something that will be done under some other program, be it Fire Smart or some other Parks Canada effort?
Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor Fischette. In terms of what I've just reported, was very much specific to buildings and properties affected by the wildfire. In terms of whether there are, as you say, trees knocked down within the town site in green spaces, I'm afraid I would have to defer to probably our operations department to answer those types of questions. And if it's outside of the park of the town boundary, then of course to Parks Canada. But I'm not aware of any specific plans and would defer to others in the municipality to answer that specific question.
Okay, thank you. And then just another question. My understanding is that the Wabasso campsite is going to be allocated for contractors' use. What's the uptake there? Is it something that they're going to use? Obviously, some of them are going to have very little choice, but is there an uptake there with the contractors that are coming to town to rebuild?
Thank you again for the question. So the Wabasso campsite was made available to contractors last summer and did see significant use. And again, there is interest and reservations being made through Parks Canada for its use again this summer. I don't have specific numbers of how many applicants there are so far, but there is an expectation that it will be used again by construction workforce for the summer 2026 season.
Okay, thank you for that. And I just have a comment on the interim housing piece. Last week I participated in a business walk with our community futures group, and there's no question there's still a big need going forward. We heard from basically every business owner, save a few, that's really one of their drawbacks in terms of upstaffing if they can. They have applicants for positions, but they have no place to put them. So obviously we're at capacity now, and I guess anytime we free up any spaces, I can assure you that the lineup and the waiting list will be around for some time. So it's really going to be beneficial once we get a number of these, whether they're secondary suites or garage suites or whatever, up and running. The need is going to be around for some time, and I certainly appreciate your efforts in keeping them running. Are there any other questions for Director Althoff before we set him free? Okay, having seen none, I will look for a motion to accept the Director Althoff's presentation for information. Councillor Hall, thank you. All in favor? None opposed? Carried. Thank you, Director Althoff. I see we have Director Donaldson, who is going to speak to Article 6.2, Operations and Utilities. Director Donaldson, thank you.
Good afternoon, Deputy Mayor and Council. I'm here to present my Director's Report for Operations and Utilities spanning from January 15th to March 31st. First, I want to discuss just some of our major projects. The water meter replacement project has been awarded, and residents should have received notification and instructions in their most recent utility bill. This is a two-phase project running in both 2026 and 2027. Additionally, the old skate park is currently being dismantled, and the equipment is being sent to our colleagues over in the town of Hinton to be repurposed. Additional work around the tennis courts and old skate park continues to take place to better prepare for the upcoming surfacing projects in that area. The tender for the rebuild-related municipal water and sewer infrastructure has now closed, and evaluation concluded with a recommendation that was brought forward as of this morning. We anticipate an RFD to committee as early as next week on April 14th to follow. I want to discuss briefly here just our request for standing offer engineering proponents and provide updates. So if you recall, we had put out a request for standing offer for municipal engineering and design services. We had received 13 applications, and we had awarded to 3 different engineering firms, the first being Associated Engineering. They are advancing our capital program and projects, and we have allocated 19 items to them, including the daycare expansion project, activity center engineering report, different HVAC upgrades across municipal buildings as some examples. The second proponent, McElhaney, is leading 15 capital programs or projects there, including our cemetery expansion, the pickleball court resurfacing, and phase 2 of the Activity Center East parking lot as some examples. And the last proponent, WSP, is supporting 2 site servicing projects related to recovery efforts. It's quite intensive, and so they are focusing on those 2 at the time being. For staffing within our department, we are at that time of year where we are getting ready to post for our summer grounds positions. We are anticipating 7 of those will be posted in the near future, along with the heavy equipment operator. It has been reposted. We have not had the best of luck with that particular position, but we are hopeful on this go round. Within maintenance, fleet, and assets, we continue to have a vacancy for the heavy duty technician that has remained vacant for greater than 2 years, and that does stem likely from a compensation perspective there. And in utilities, we do have 2 summer term positions this year, and they have been successfully filled. We have also posted and just recently closed for a project manager, and that closed on Sunday evening. So we anticipate interviews to follow, and that will help run our capital project program there. In terms of service trends, asphalt patching has begun, and street sweeping is scheduled to start this week, weather permitting. We've completed a bike rack inventory and condition assessments throughout the town site. So you will notice that many of the bike racks have either been painted or are getting painted, the ones that are currently in place, and those that have been deemed unsafe have been removed. Memorial bench inspections are complete, and we are in the process of conducting municipal bench inspections. So any benching that are not memorial benches are still underway. We are working again this year with the men's shed on select rehabilitation of municipal benches, and we have placed our order for the first batch of new standardized benches. which will go out to the Activity Center East project and a few select locations throughout the town site as well there. So we're anticipating those in June of this year. We are proceeding with hazardous tree removal. We just received the report last week and are anticipating approximately 20 hazardous trees to be removed throughout the town site. In addition to that, we have traffic controls that are going to be implemented near both fueling stations the week of April 20th. So I know you just spoke about that with Director Olthoff there. But this year, the one change that you will notice is that we are actually going to be putting in controls at the Shell in addition to the Petro, and we've made some adjustments there. In addition to that, we are having regular biweekly meetings with both the fueling stations and with Suncor, who supplies the fuel for the Petro Canada. So we're hoping by having regular communications with them, we can identify efficiencies to make that process as smooth as possible. From January 15th to March 31st in maintenance, fleet, and assets, 315 work orders have been completed, with a small number remaining open or in progress. During that time, in our utilities department, we had 289 work orders that have been completed, alongside with ongoing inspections, installations, repairs, and preventative maintenance activities, including things such as stormline maintenance and sewer flushing in problem areas. We continue transit business planning, and that includes stakeholder engagement. In addition to that, the transit storage facility has received its certificate of completion, marking its project closeout, with our final warranty walkthrough scheduled for April 22nd. Additionally, I just wanted to touch on ridership for the first quarter of this year. So our regional line had 5,140 riders. Our local service had 5,914 riders. So that is a 66.6% increase in Q1 in 2026 over Q1 in 2025 for the local route. We do not have data, obviously, for the regional, as it wasn't in existence at that point last year, but that's 2,364 additional riders. For communications and engagement, our operations and utilities leadership team has led site walkthroughs with the Government of Alberta Disaster Recovery Program engineers that took place on March 17th and 18th. And that was to demonstrate specific municipal assets and programs required post-fire, for which DRP funding is being requested. Additionally, we held I wouldn't say we held, but we were invited to a roundtable with the Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce on March 5th to discuss public transit with the business community. And lastly, the Communities in Bloom Committee continues to engage with Tourism Jasper and different community members regarding our 2026 initiatives, including Stewardship Day. And I am open to any questions, comments you may have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Donaldson. I'll look for councillors for questions. Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, and through you to Director Donaldson. I'm just wondering if the council can see the transit business plan work that's ongoing. Is there any documentation or anything that you can give us? The reason I'm asking is because if we're moving forward to get to buy buses and things, I've always thought that a public-private kind of joint procedure on this would be something that should be worth looking at. I'm just wondering if that's been considered, and if not, perhaps we could have some input into it.
Deputy Mayor Frechette, first, I'll say that we have a motion action list item. So council's specifically said, committee direct administration to return with the results of the 2027 to 2031 transit business plan prior to July 2026. So you've already told us to go away and do some work and come back. So we're working on that basis. If council would like something different, that's why we talk about the motion action list regularly. So if council said, well, actually we want it sooner, or we want to see something different, or there's a opportunity to say so. Council did have a workshop recently led by Director Donaldson to cover that, and there was an opportunity to gather input from council as a stakeholder, and Director Donaldson and the team have also been talking with other local stakeholders, including industry, the Chamber of Commerce, hospitality and tourism partners. So it's in process. If there are additional ideas that council wants to see incorporated, then absolutely. And we are currently operating under the assumption that we'll have something for you prior to July of 2026. And if at that time there's a concept that isn't reflected or that council wants to put more emphasis on, then you can direct us to incorporate that in the business plan. The other thing that I'd say is we are in a public-private partnership right now. Full stop. We have 2 private contractors that we hire to do things on our behalf. So the systems are not completely public systems. We hire somebody to do work. The employees that drive the buses are not municipal employees. They are private employees of other companies that we hire to do the work. So we are by definition in a public-private sort of operation. Now, could that be extended? Or are there other ways to do that? Absolutely. And that's something that we could see reflected in the business plan. But just to be clear that we are currently in a mixed public-private delivery system.
I guess what I would like to see is an interim report on the plan and allow us to have some input to it rather than wait until July when it's perhaps complete, and it's many months from now. So if there was some sort of just one-page interim report on what's going on, I would like to see that.
Any other questions for Director Donaldson? Councillors? Councillor Waxler, you're far away there. You have your hand up. No? Okay. Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. A couple questions around the traffic controls around at the fueling stations. Were they well received last year? Was it a successful? Did it work?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hall. Eventually it did work, yes. It took quite a bit of maneuvering and a little bit of trial and error. But eventually I think we did get to a point where it worked, and that final step was actually implementing no parking, at least by the Petro in certain spots. That was the one part that was missing. What we learned last year is that Suncor wanted greater involvement, and there was a disconnect between the franchisee and Suncor communication. So this year we've brought them into the fold at the onset. Additionally, we are going to be working with the Shell as well. They seem to be eager to partake and don't seem to have any concerns as of yet, but we do begin those discussions tomorrow ahead of the busy season.
Thank you for that. And I also wonder if there's opportunity for a bit of engagement with residents around fueling up at certain times, or because both gas stations are open 24 hours. So, I think last year I didn't have trouble fueling up. I would just go late at night, early in the morning. My other question is around the heavy duty mechanic. And I know it's been a vacant position for a couple of years. How does that affect the daily operations? And you touched on it a little bit, but why? You could maybe go a little bit deeper. Why you think it's been so difficult to fill?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hall. I think it's twofold. I think it's the industry as a whole. It's very difficult to find heavy-duty mechanics just about everywhere. But again, our compensation does not appear to be in line with, let's say, what the town of Banff is offering in terms of total compensation. We're a little bit below. We're further away from a major urban center. So that does pose a challenge. In addition to that, you just hear it throughout industry. Like it's just really hard to recruit journey persons right now as a whole, even in the major urban centers. So it's a systemic issue. But I do think with appropriate compensation, that would go a long way to attracting a suitable candidate. And in terms of the difficulties, more so once we have our own bus fleet, particularly, that is when we're going to start to see even greater concerns. Right now, our largest challenge is actually with the fire engines, having to send those out and being without those. That is the largest problem without having a heavy duty mechanic on staff.
Thank you, Director Donaldson. Any other questions for Director Donaldson from councillors? If not, I just have a question regarding your conversations with the fuel stations, Petro-Canada and the Shell. And I noticed last year one of the issues with the congestion was their delivery trucks were arriving quite often in the middle of the day when we are at peak traffic. Is there any discussions to the schedule? I appreciate it probably goes on when they need the fuel, but I'm assuming that they're aware that timing is pretty important for us in the summer months for our delivery schedule.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. We had many conversations, especially with Suncor, about that. And initially, they had advised that they would change their fueling deliveries to come in early morning. And if the off chance that it did come in later in a day or where it was busier, we had offered to provide an escort and just to support them with that, just due to the congestion. That was not always translated down to the driver level. And so it was a system of adjusting as they came in. However, our intent this year is to ensure we get ahead of that, hence the regular biweekly touch points.
That's great. That'll definitely be beneficial once the summer gets in full swing. I just have, I guess it's more of a comment about the transit and parking issues. We last week I did a community business walk with the Community Futures group, and we had a number of questions that, of course, we were just trying to get a sense of the pulse of how they were doing and how their winter went and their perspectives for the coming season. We did add an extra question. I'll use the royal we. I asked an extra question of all of the business owners that we spoke to about the transit system. Was it used? How important was it? And interestingly enough, the overwhelming feeling was it was very much used. And the only real comment that was against the system was that it wasn't more frequent. So I feel that this walk really helped to flesh out a lot of the gray areas as to how much it was being used, and much of this data will be correlated into a report from the Community Futures Committee, which the day of the walk we had a member from Chamber of Commerce with us, and we had a representative from the Alberta provincial government. So I think that going forward, we're going to be able to glean quite a bit of more insight from that little exercise that will shed a little more light onto exactly what the business owners feel about it. And as a piece to this discussion, one of the issues that uniformly all of the businesses had issues with parking. They said, we have people parking in front of our business. They say they're all day. So I think the question as to which piece of this puzzle is more important than the other, I think they really seem to go hand in hand. We have a parking problem, and we have a sort of an idea that nobody or very few people use our bus system. So that, for me personally, and I think as our group with the Community Futures, helped to shed a lot of light on exactly where that is. I mean, we do have our other data, of course. We know how many people are riding it, but this was right from the horse's mouth, if you will. The actual business owners who have people working for them that don't have cars. Some are living at Marmot Meadows, some are living in the town site, but they don't have transportation. And if anything, especially the food industry, they thought that we should be running till midnight, because that's when a lot of their staff need the transportation. So again, this is not a question, but I was just very fascinated by that, what the actual business owners feel and what they said about it. So we have that extra data to work with going forward, and I know that'll be beneficial to the community at large and certainly to your department. Anyway, thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, and I agree with you. I have a coworker at the Moline Range that has shifted her shifts to daytime because she doesn't get out late enough at night. But I know this is a winter schedule, and I'm just curious if there is going to be some changes with the summer schedule with the Marmot Meadows route.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, through you to Councillor Hall. Any of the concerns that have been brought forward, we've been tracking, and we continuously track that. I know previous to our current schedule, there was a lot of concern around the Marmot Meadows schedule, and we were able to incorporate additional service to reflect that, utilizing our regional route. And we will continue to log things. So if people have suggestions, they're able to enter that in on our website. And we'll make sure that that's added there. And when we go to build our summer schedule, obviously no guarantees, but we'll look and see where the feedback is coming from. We utilized our previous transit survey too to help form our current routes. But if we don't know about it, we can't make changes. So we do encourage people to continue to let us know, and we can log that.
If I may, I wonder if there's if you've had an opportunity or the team has to engage directly with the Marmot Meadows residents, or would that go through Red Cross, or would that be the operations department?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette, through you to Councillor Hall. Not directly, no. Historically, what we have received is feedback through Director Olthoff via the Red Cross. So that is where our information was coming from, in addition to our survey and direct feedback forms that were submitted through our website. But that is a good suggestion, and so we will take that away.
Councillor Waxer, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Through you to Director Donaldson, I wanted to just make a comment that on the previous council, we had a number of presentations from the men's shed people, and worked with them to find a place to operate from. So it is really nice to see in your report that you're working with them on the rehabilitation of municipal benches. I think this has been a great win for the community, as well as for the people participating in the men's shed program. And I wanted to express gratitude to you for developing that partnership, and also to them for their work in making our community a better place to live.
Thank you, Councillor Waxer. Any more questions for Director Donaldson? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to receive the report for information, please? Councillor Waxer, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.3, I don't know if there's any more discussion from administration on that article.
Well, no discussion from administration about the content specifically, but just around process. Councillor Roger declared a conflict, and so in terms of dealing with this item, I think maybe the best way, if there would be a motion to table this item to the next regular scheduled council meeting, that'd be appropriate. I think all members of council could vote on that motion, and then we wouldn't lose quorum. That would deal with this agenda item. There was a question that was asked about whether moving it to the next regular council would change the timeline of the hearing, and Director Malinchuk has advised that it would not require. So nothing else would need to change. We just would bump this item to the next regular council meeting for consideration by all or more members of council at that time. So a motion to table this item 6.3 to the next regular council meeting would be required.
Thank you for that clarity, CEO Given. Councillor Roger, do you care to make that motion?
Yes, I move that we table the motion set out in 6.3 that the council approve the properties subject to the 25 tax recovery notification list offered for sale by public auction. We table it to the next regular council meeting.
Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Takes us to Article 6.4, Jasper Skatepark final financing. Director Melanchak, I believe.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Just one slight update on this item, that we were able to reduce the number down to an amount of $21,706.66 after other contributions made by the Jasper Skatepark last week. Committee last week.
Thank you for that. Would anybody care to? So we'll need a updated number on the recommendation to $21,706.66. Is that right, Councillor Hall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. I do have a question. Then this 21,000 and change would be still outstanding that the skate park committee would owe to the municipality. I apologize, it wasn't at the last committee meeting.
No apology necessary. Deputy Mayor, through to Councillor Hall, the amount was recommended to Council from committee that the outstanding amount would be approved use from the annual general capital reserve to fund the rest of that money. So the $21,706.66 would be coming from that reserve.
Thank you for that clarity. Would anybody care to make a motion? Councillor Hall.
I would make the motion that council approve the use of the annual general capital reserve in the amount of up to $21,706.66 to offset the outstanding amount owing from the skate park committee.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.5, unsolicited donations post wildfire. I believe Director Given is, or pardon me, CEO Given is going to speak to that.
Sure, Deputy Mayor Frechette. So this is a recommendation from committee. At committee last week, administration reported that since the wildfire, the municipality has received a handful, totaling just over $32,000. If you call that a handful, it's a large handful maybe, but a handful of unsolicited donations made to the municipality. And administration brought forward a recommendation and a report seeking guidance from council on how those should be handled. There was some discussion and debate at council at the committee meeting, and the motion that's in your package, the recommendation that's in your package, reflects the motion that was made at committee last time we met.
Thank you, CEO Given. Anybody care to make the motion? Recommendation? Councillor Roger.
I move that council approve the transfer of $32,625.44 in unsolicited donations received post wildfire to the Jasper Community Team Society's Caring Community Fund.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6.6, transit fleet procurement. CEO Given, speak to that.
Sure, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Again, coming from committee last week, the committee reviewed a report about transit fleet procurement. The report was essentially recommending that council amend the budget to broaden the types of fleet that administration could look to procure, moving away from exclusively zero emission buses to open it up more broadly with a description of transit bus purchase. The amounts stay the same, and there were no other changes in that. Administration would move forward with the RFP, the municipality under a request for proposals, an RFP is a request for proposals. Under the request for proposal, administration would be able to test the market, assess what's available, and then bring forward recommendations to council at a future meeting. So in essence, this motion is about amending the budget to broaden the types of fleet that can be considered. It is not yet a motion to purchase any fleet.
Thank you, CEO Given. We have three recommendations for council for motions. Do we have any councillors have a issue with lumping them into one, or would you like to do them all separately? Councillor Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Through you to Mr. Given. I just had one question. Is there a deadline on when we have to spend the money by?
Deputy Mayor Frechette for Councillor Roger. Yes, as discussed at that committee of the whole meeting, March 31st, 2027 is the program end deadline. Administration sought and received an extension to that date. Previously, it was March 31st, 2026. So March 31st, 2027.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Frechette. Question to administration: is that enough time to procure a fleet and fulfill our obligations?
Yeah, the administration believes that it should be. We had a bit of discussion last time about sort of delivery timelines, and depending on the types of units, delivery timelines might vary, but administration is confident that if we're invoiced for fleet and it's on the way, that we should be able to make it through that. So administration is confident we can meet that timeline.
Any other questions for Director or for CEO Given? Councillor Waxer? None from you? Okay, thank you. I see a shake of the head. Okay. So the recommendation to council is there's three items. I think we've had some clarity on all three. Do we care to just make the motion for all three collectively, or would you like to do them separately? I think we've answered the questions on all three collectively. Okay. Anybody care to make the motion, please? Councillor Roger.
That council amend the approved capital budget to remove the item transit fleet zero emission bus purchase 3 in the total amount of $2,250,000, and also to amend the approved capital budget to add the item transit bus purchase in the amount of $2,250,000 and direct administration to proceed with transit fleet procurement.
Any discussions, debate on the motion? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. I'm happy to vote in favor of this motion. I think it's really exciting that we're moving towards procuring our own fleet. I think it's going to give us a lot more control and flexibility in how we deliver the service. And I also am very grateful for the federal government for allowing us to adjust these program parameters, recognizing that zero emission options just don't fit what we need right now. And I think it allows us to move forward in a way that fits the needs of our community.
Thank you for your comments. Councillor Hall. Councillor Waxer, I don't see any motions from you. Any hands up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say.
Yes, okay. Sorry. Yes, go ahead.
I'm more than happy also. I would echo all that Councillor Hall said. I think this is an exciting moment to be moving forward, and it certainly seems to match with what we heard from Director Donaldson and from Deputy Mayor Frechette in terms of the need for transit in the community.
Thank you for that, Councillor Waxer. I will call the question if there's no other debate. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 6.7, Parking Authority Bylaw. Any discussion on the Parking Authority Bylaw, CEO Given, or there's none? Okay. Recommendation, anybody care to make the motion on the Parking Authority Bylaw? Councillor Hall.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Frechette. I would move that council read for the third time Bylaw 277, being a bylaw of the Municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to establish the Municipality of Jasper Parking Authority 2026.
Thank you. Any discussion? Debate on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Item 6.8. The Jasper offsite levies. I'm assuming we will just not be able to address that today, CEO Gibbon.
Deputy Mayor Frechette, we haven't yet received certification from Parks Canada, which is required before moving to third reading. So this would naturally come back at our next regular council meeting.
Thank you for that clarity. We will move on to item 7, notices of motion. I see none there. Article 8 or item 8, councillor reports. Any councillors have any updates on their activities, please? Okay, Councillor Wax, I didn't see your hand up, I don't think. Okay, I will just give a quick overview. I've discussed a number of things that I've been involved with of late. One was the grand opening of the Andriano Laundry. I had the great pleasure of joining Tony and Claire Andriano for their opening, and wish them all the very best in the next number of months or years that they may be in that location. And also, again, just to reiterate the community business walk that I was involved with the Community Futures Group. We gleaned a lot of valuable information, and which will be correlated and put together in a report once all the reports are back in from the various communities. And that's all I have to report. Upcoming events. Item 9. We have the Jasper Pride and Ski Festival opening ceremony and flag raising at 12:15 p.m. April 10th. Commemoration Park. I believe Mayor Ireland will be back for that event. Jasper Park Chamber of Commerce General Meeting at 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. April 15th at O'Shea's Restaurant. And we have the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and Annual Convention, which is not till June 4th to 7th. But as been told in prior meetings that if you want to take any specialized courses at that convention, that it's best to get registered for them sooner than later. Now, item 10. Adjournment. If anybody would like to make the motion that we adjourn, if there's no further business. Councillor Roger.
I move that there being no further business, the regular meeting of April 7th, 2026 be adjourned at 3:55.
Thank you. Any further discussions, debates on the adjournment motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.